having a nuclear plant in Singapore? For many people, that's a very big no-no because it sounds scary. Like imagine living next to a giant nuclear facility. Some even describe it as sleeping beside a nuclear bomb. One mistake and the whole country is gone. But recently, Singapore ministers have said something interesting. They are seriously considering nuclear energy as part of our future. So today, let's break it down and ask one simple question. Is nuclear power actually a practical option for Singapore? First, let's talk about the biggest concern, safety. When people think about nuclear disasters, two names always come up, Chernobyl and Fukushima. Chernobyl affected an exclusion zone of about 2,600 square kilometers. Fukushima's evacuation zone was over 1,000 square kilometers. Now, compare that to Singapore. Singapore's total land area is about 730 square kilometers. That means, in a worst-case scenario, the impact could potentially cover the entire country. And that is a very serious concern, because Singapore has no real buffer zone. In larger countries, a nuclear accident can be contained within a region. In Singapore, there's no far away. So naturally, the next question is, where would we even put a nuclear plant? The most obvious candidate is Jurong Island. It's already an energy and petrochemical hub. It's restricted, secured, and is relatively further from residential area. That's a very big plus. But it's still close to mainland Singapore, and psychologically, that still makes people uneasy. So, people have suggested alternatives. One idea is to build it on the ground, using the earth as an extra layer of protection. Another is to place it offshore, maybe even an artificial island further away from the population. These ideas improve safety, but they can increase cost and engineering complexity. But the good news is, Singapore is not looking at those giant old-school nuclear plants you saw earlier. Instead, the focus is on something called small modular reactors, or SMR. Think about them as smaller, smarter, and safer. Traditional reactors rely heavily on active system, pumps, electricity, human control. If those fail, things can go very wrong quickly. SMRs are designed differently. Many of them use passive safety system, meaning even if power is lost, the reactor can cool itself using natural forces like gravity and convection. No human action needed. They also have smaller cores, which means less fuel, less heat, and a much smaller potential release in an accident. Some designs are even built on the ground or fully sealed. So statistically, the risk is really low. With SMRs, experts believe it could be 100 times safer than the older reactors. That said, and this is important, the risk is nearly zero. But of course, in Singapore, even a tiny risk carries huge consequences. Next, let's talk about the cost, because this is where nuclear really becomes controversial. A typical natural gas power plant, what Singapore mostly uses today, costs around $1 billion to build. A nuclear plant? We are talking about $10 billion or even more. Some overseas projects have gone beyond $50 billion. That's a massive upfront investment. So why even consider it? Because once a nuclear plant is built, it is actually very cheap to operate. Fuel costs are low, prices are stable, and it can run continuously for decades. Compare that to natural gas, cheap to build but expensive and volatile to run. So nuclear is basically a long-term bet. You pay that first and then to save and stabilize costs in the future. But realistically, the benefit may only be felt beyond our generation. So, why nuclear at all? Why not other alternatives? LNG is what Singapore relies on today. It's reliable, flexible, but we imported 100% of it. That means we are actually exposed to global price shocks and supply risks. Apart from that, we have solar energy. We are already pushing it everywhere. Rooftops, reservoirs, even offshore. But Singapore is small, land is limited. Solar alone cannot meet total demand. Wind power, not really practical. Singapore's wind speeds are simply too low to generate meaningful electricity. So, when you compare all options, nuclear starts to stand out. It provides clean, stable, 24/7 power without relying heavily on imports. Finally, let's talk about the fuel. Will Singapore use uranium or thorium? The answer is almost certainly uranium. Why? Because uranium is already used in almost all nuclear plants over the world. It's proven, regulated, and commercially available. Thorium, on the other hand, is still experimental. Countries like China and India are exploring it, but it's still not ready for large-scale development yet. And Singapore's approach is always the same: proven, reliable, and low risk. So, after all this, where do we stand? Nuclear power offers Singapore something very attractive: clean energy, stable supply, and long-term security. But it also comes with the difficulty trade-off: a very small probability of very large consequence. And because Singapore is small, dense, and highly interconnected, that consequence feels much bigger here than anywhere else. So, in the end, this is not just a technical decision. It is not just about engineering or cost. It's about risk tolerance. It's about how much uncertainty we are willing to accept for a more secured future.